There are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true, the other is to refuse to believe what is true. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. I found I had less and less to say, until finally, I became silent, and began to listen. I discovered in the silence, the voice of God. It is better to try something and fail than to try nothing and succeed. The result may be the same, but you won't be. We always grow more through defeats than victories. People demand freedom of speech as a compensation for the freedom of thought which they seldom use. The most common form of despair is not being who you are. Above all, do not lose your desire to walk every day. I walk myself into a state of well-being, walk away from every illness. I have walked myself into my best thoughts, and I know of no thought so burdensome that one cannot walk away from it. But by sitting still, the more one sits still, the closer one comes to feeling ill. Thus, if one just keeps on walking, everything will be all right. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. People settle for a level of despair they can tolerate and call it happiness. The Bible is very easy to understand. But we Christians are a bunch of scheming swindlers. We pretend to be unable to understand it because we know very well that the minute we understand, we are obliged to act accordingly. Take a chance and you may lose. Take not a chance and you have lost already. In order to help another effectively, I must understand what he understands. If I do not know that, my greater understanding will be of no help to him. Instruction begins when you put yourself in his place so that you may understand what he understands and in the way he understands it. The question is not to be or not to be, it is what we should be until we are not. If I were a physician, and if I were allowed to prescribe just one remedy for all the ills of the modern world, I would prescribe silence. For even if the word of God were proclaimed in the modern world, how could one hear it with so much noise? Therefore, create silence. Confidence is the present tense of hope. It is the duty of the human understanding to understand that there are things which it cannot understand. The tyrant dies and his rule is over, the martyr dies and his rule begins. Our life always expresses the result of our dominant thoughts. Do it or don't do it, you will regret both. The more people who believe something, the more apt it is to be wrong. The person who's right often has to stand alone. Who am I? How did I come into the world? Why was I not consulted? The minority is always stronger than the majority, because the minority is generally formed by those who really have an opinion. The unhappy person is never present to themselves because they always live in the past or the future. The function of prayer is not to influence God, but rather to change the nature of the one who prays.